Hi. Wow, I'm shocked at how many questions I got from my call with the pin on it. Um, I don't know whether or not it's just because of the timeliness of my pictures and stuff like that, but yeah, this is amazing. I will go through every question though. Just be prepared for this thing being a little bit long-winded again. Cool. Let's get started. So, Umeya Kapoor asks, "Is it easy being gay?" I mean, it's harder than being straight. I mean, I don't really have anything to compare it to, because I've always been different, if not out in some way, shape, or form. No, it's not. I mean, it's getting easier for sure, but there's always something that can be improved on, I think, because right now most people's idea of what a gay person is someone that's very is either someone that's super masculine and buff or like a really girly girl guy, like borderline like drag queen. And there's just so much in between, and most of the images of gay people are white. Out magazine has this problem where they use straight people on their covers for some weird reason. It just kind of feeds into the idolization of masculinity that even the gay community has, which is a little bit weird. Yeah, like for all of the acceptance and good stuff that we seek out from being in the LGBT community, like with all of the discrimination that we face, it's so bad that even now, like, gay people are in a way like even more vain in terms of like if you see what people write on their Jack profiles, it's a little bit disheartening. Like saying like, oh, I like this race only, no fatties. It's just pretty vain and stuck up sounding stuff. Like if someone talks to me and I'm not into the way they look, which is fair, I just don't talk to them. Like I don't really need to outrightly like announce to the world that like, hey, I'm excluding you because of the way you look. I think there's a difference. Ness Riley 16 asks, "Have you ever had a friend or family member not accept who you are?" By the way, you're awesome. Thank you, Ness. That's really sweet. No, that's never happened to me before, but that's because I live in a more liberal part of the world. And I try my best not to forget that, even though it is difficult to... It is very difficult for me to even imagine what it would be like to be estranged from your family or your friends, because that clearly happens. Like, there's the parts of the world where you can get killed and not be reprimanded for it, for being gay. So no, unfortunately, like, I would like to go on this really like beautiful story of how somebody didn't accept me for who I was and then they came around, but I don't have that story, unfortunately. cwiththebeatles asks, "How was your first experience?" What experience are you talking about? If you're not specific, I can't answer your question. Next one. Just kidding. I know what you're talking about. My first experience was decently awkward. I think that's how most of it goes. I do think it went a little bit better just because I watched enough porn to know, at least have a relative idea what I was doing, even though it did take a little bit of feeling around. Excuse me, I have food in my teeth. Yeah. It was pretty... I mean, it was good. I mean, I kind of now understand the concept of dry spells and people going on a really... Like, how hard it is to go on a really long time without any sexual fulfillment. Yeah. That's how they get you. First time, it's... Usually the first relationship, it's pretty good. Or, like, you kind of realize how great it is. At least hopefully in some way, shape, or form. And then if you break up, then you don't have it anymore. Advice to closeted LGBTs and how to come out and deal with the possibility of not having acceptance. I actually thought about my answer for this in advance. It's a really hard. I don't propose to be the main authority on how to be LGBT just because I'm only one person and I am privileged enough to live in a part of the world where I'm pretty comfortable with being who I am. But if you have the possibility of not dealing with acceptance, then I mean, if they're your friends, then they're not really your friends if they don't accept you. But if you're talking about family members, which that's probably what you're talking about. If you're talking about family members, I think you just need to. Well, first of all, you need to. By the way, I'm taking all of this great knowledge from Dan Savage. If you don't know who he is, he's a gay sex columnist, and he's really great. He gives really, really good advice, and he's so super, super intelligent about this stuff. So he says that first you should gauge the situation and just see, like, is there a possibility of you getting kicked out? If there is, then you owe it to yourself to not say anything so that way you don't get put out on the street. But like after you go to college, and if you can support yourself, you don't have to see your family ever again if they don't accept you. I remember that Dan Savage, he recommends he recommends like using your presence and you visiting them, your family, as like a bargaining chip, kind of like. Something must be really funny over there. I don't know if you can hear that. Dan Savage says that, you know, if your parents are like, oh, like, would you mind not bringing your same-sex partner over to Thanksgiving this time? Well, then you can be like, okay, well, I mean, I like my same-sex partner a lot, and so if you don't want him to be there, then I don't have to be there. Maybe next time. And also, he also said that, you know, you should give your parents like a year or so to deal with it and kind of work through their feelings, because chances are, since they've never gone through this before, they might act like naive little children, like acting really icky and gross about it, and it's important to be patient with them. But if they don't come around, you don't have to see them again. So I guess in general, you know, just if you are planning on moving on or not talking to them anymore, definitely just make sure that you have financial independence under your, like, as a possibility when you graduate from college, or just when you leave the house. So maybe start working early, yeah, that's all the advice that I can give. I mean, I know that there are places where like, you can go to if you get kicked out, but I know that people don't have those resources everywhere, so I'm not gonna like recommend that to everybody as if that everybody has access to that. That's everything that comes to mind right now. I don't know how helpful that was because, once again, I'm not like the best authority on everything. Eric asks, how many times have you had to deal with assholes in the streets for being gay? That's a difficult question because I always felt different, and there were definitely people that made me feel awful for being different. But at the same time, nobody like looks at me on the street, immediately identifies me as a gay person, and then like says something mean to me. But I know that happens a lot. Yeah, so I haven't had to deal with that a lot. The closest that I can say is that in high school, like using gay as a insult was very, very prevalent in my high school. And I think that was for most people at the time, maybe even now. And that definitely like, it's like one of those like microaggressions that kind of just make people slowly starting to like believe that there's something wrong with being that way, which there isn't. It's just that like it's just hard for, you know, when you're of the same age as those people saying those things that like they're a bunch of stupid high school students that are very insecure about their masculinity and their sexuality, and they're kind of like projecting that onto each other, I guess, in a really sick and fucked up way. But I don't know how much that helps, because if you're in high school, then like you probably won't get that, and because I didn't. Like, I totally thought that everybody knew what they were talking about. Excuse me, I'm gonna get some water. Let's see. Oh, what goes on at Pride? Music, floats / parade, general partying, and being awesome. That's what I've heard. I wasn't able to participate much in Pride and WeHo, unfortunately, which fucking breaks my heart. But I did go to SF Pride. I think it was like late during college, I think, and there's a plane going by. Everything's going right, guys. Yeah, there's music, there's floats and parades. It's usually like in the daytime, all the floats happen, and then at nighttime, just a bunch of like really hardcore partying happens. I'm not a party person, so I wouldn't know. But apparently that's what happens. Like, you get a pretty good, like, weird mix of floats. Like, I remember when I went to SF Pride, I envisioned like every float being like amazing and fabulous and sparkly and rainbows and drag queens everywhere, but there are a few floats where they're a little bit too tame in relation to what I was thinking of. Like, you know, it's just a bunch of like organizations that couldn't really afford a big float, and so they just got a truck. But at the same time, you know, it's very important that those small groups like are there to have exposure. And, you know, it's a lot of like brands that were marching there to promote themselves, and which is great too. It's just that it's like not entirely what you were expecting. Like, probably back then when Pride was like not as big of a thing, it was probably a little bit more like focused on like just celebrating how fabulous the LGBT community is. Now it's more like, oh, look at all of these groups that are supportive of this. Don't you like us? Yeah. Barrett _1508 asks, how do you react when someone offends you for being gay? Do you stay quiet or do you yell at them? See, that's... I think you guys like think that I have to go through like struggles like every day. I don't, because I'm lucky enough to live here in Hollywood, where it's a little bit more accepted. Even though a lot of people have very skewed perception about what gay people are still, but there is like a level of acceptance still. So I've honestly never had to like call someone out in the shit and be like, no, hold on, that's not a thing. That you shouldn't be saying that thing. Honestly, though, that I'm so afraid of conflict. Like, I hate conflict so much and how it feels, and like fighting back at people, that I most likely will stay quiet, even though it's not the best thing. But like, I'm not an abrasive person, and so like it's really hard for me to like muster up the courage to be like to call someone out on their shit. Maybe I will now. I don't know. I've grown a lot since high school. But I can't tell you accurately. I'm sorry, Barrett. Theater Geek Logan. Hey, Theater Geek Logan. I remember your question from last time. Who was the first person you came out to? I came out to 4 of my friends that was taking me out for a birthday lunch, actually. More on that later, because I see a question at the end that asks about me coming out too. Let's see. Annalise Braves. How did your parents react? They're okay with it. At the same time, like, I kind of think it was a little bit glaringly obvious. Yeah. Beast Madness. Any crush? Oh yeah, hundreds. I fall in love probably 3 times a day. Whether it's on Tinder or if it's at the workplace, because I work at a place where it's a lot of like creative people, and creative people are the kind of people that I'm drawn to. I'm not telling you who though. Last question is, Riley Hoovian, was it easy to come out? Okay, so to build off of the answer for a Theater Geek Logan's question, I actually came out by accident. So remember what I said about the 4 friends that were taking me out for lunch? Well, just because, they were discussing me and my life because they were trying to make it about me, which I always appreciate, is that they were asking me about who I liked. And I'm not good at lying to my friends. Like, I always feel comfortable telling them the truth only. And so I was using gender neutral terms mainly, like, this person is this. This person does that. I didn't use he or she. And I think I let a he slip out of there, and so that's kind of how they figured it out. They kind of put all the pieces together. So yeah. It was a little bit awkward. They were totally accepting, and it was a pretty memorable day that it happened. Like, I never told anybody before, and I actually really like telling the story just because it's like, well, first of all, of course it would happen to me. Accidentally letting it slip out. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, I think it's such a funny story, and it happened with people that I'm, like, decently comfortable with, and so, yeah. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for all of your questions. If you have any more questions, if you want me to elaborate on something, I'd be happy to. Anyways, happy Pride. Thank you so much again for all your questions. Yeah, it's a great time. We're making a lot of progress. There still isn't a lot of visibility for the T and B part of LGBT, but hopefully we can all work on that and just maybe try to keep them in mind more. But anyways, yeah. I'm glad to have all of you guys too, and thank you so much for supporting, and be kind to one another, as Ellen always says. Bye.